of web service, and also we'll use existing web service. In this case, I'm going to use Google Web Service for location. Reverse geocoding. For example, one of our last exercise, we got a latitude longitude pair from a location listener. So, is there any way I can translate into a readable format? Address format. Of course, this example, you may have a little restriction until the URL is being whitelisted, but I don't want to put you guys on wait. So probably I'll introduce something else also, because this exercise has a dependency over the next advanced topics. But you can try up to a part where you're getting a web service, assuming a web service can be uh, manipulated from a local folder itself. But this time I'm going to retrieve from a live location. I'll let you know from where I'm going to consume the web service. Google Maps API web service, which is free for development, and maybe with the number of calls you make, maybe some 3000 or 2000 API calls free. Rest is chargeable, but for development that is more than enough. So I'm only looking for something geocoding API. In fact, I'm looking for reverse geocoding API. There is an example. So this is the JSON response which is going to come from Google if I call this URL. The URL in this format. So the latitude and longitude pair has to be uh, encoded inside the URL itself, and when you call this URL, you get a JSON response. You can call if it is this. If you notice, this URL contain a JSON format, so it will give you a JSON format, and I hope there is a XML format also available, even though the doc does not explain it, but XML format is also available. So whatever format you want, you can retrieve them by suitably forming the URL as stated here. The last one, you need to supply your API key. That's where Google detects who's accessing their API, so that it can count how many API requests you are making. This is free for a development purpose, that's what I said, but Google requires you to register your application. So per application, maybe I'm assuming some 2500 API calls. 2500 times per day you can access the URL. Anything goes above, it should be chargeable, and of course Google will block it. This is how Google makes some money, so we cannot blame them. So in this example, we are going to see how to create this API. One. Second, we are going to use async tasks to call this URL, and we are going to retrieve a JSON response, and we are going to uh, decode this JSON, parse the JSON whichever coming from Google Map API location, and then I'm looking for one particular tag called formatted address, which gives me kind of a readable format that I would like to display in my app. So using the latitude longitude, I can find the readable formatted address. So that's what my application is going to do now. Few things we need to know. First part, we need to make the API key ready before doing it, because in fact if I try to call this URL through a browser, gives me an error stating that the provided API key is invalid and request denied. So I need to have the API key ready at least for retrieving the exact right response. You should have a Google account, of course. Any Gmail account will do. There is a section which talks about API key, and the information has been given here. Visit the API console at so once I visit, log in with your Google account, click service link from the left hand menu and in the API console and activating Geocoding API service. So this particular thing you should have it activated. Let me open in a new tab. I have already logged in using my Gmail account. So if you are logging using your Gmail account, you will also get the similar screen. Otherwise, you will be given a login screen and then you have to log. If you notice the available service in my login, it's stating the direction API is already activated because I've been using it. In this case, Geocoding API. So let me see if it is active. Okay. In this, I have to go service. So what's the one they are asking us? Geocoding API. Geocoding API is turned off. So if you notice, I need to switch it on. Courtesy limit 2500 requests per day. So anything goes above to this limit, you won't get a response. This is for commercial apps, which, for example, once you are developing an application which requires location continuously, accordingly, you can have a billing account set up with Google. If you notice, a billing account is there. Anything goes beyond, it's chargeable. Of course, you have to set the billing account, then only these things will get impacted. But for a development purpose, 2500 requests per day, it's too much still, because we won't make that many requests for on a given day. So whatever necessary services which is Google is giving for you, you can have it enabled accordingly. So various application, various development, I have something set on. Google Map SDK for iOS, JavaScript, geolocation API for maps. I've inserted. This is our chargeable, if you notice, see. So, but in this case, what we have to enable is Geocoding API service. And is there any reverse geocoding is there? Let me verify, because that may be required to be activated. Okay, I don't see anything. So what they asked, Geocoding API, I have it set to on. Now I'm going to API access tab. You have to generate your key, API key here. If you notice, various API keys already been created here under my account, because it's some of my applications which is accessing them. So if you notice, I already have a couple of API keys created for Android apps. So one API is ready for me, already available. But if you are doing it from a scratch, if it is a new account, this particular section won't be there, where you need to at the bottom there is an option for create new Android key. You have to start using this particular dialog. Once you start adding them, it will pop up here. It will be displayed here. Okay. So what are all these things, and how to create this API key? First thing, once your API key is ready, you can attach it with the URL here, like this. Sorry. This will only work in an Android phone. Of course, it won't work in a browser also. I can't even test it. If you see, I tried to give it this IP site or mobile application is not authorized to use this API key, for example, because I'm running on the browser. This URL should be called from an Android phone only, then only these things will work. Anyway, let us see how to create the API key. Since I have already created, I'm going to add existing API key. So I'm going to use edit allowed Android API keys, which already contains couple of applications. I'm going to add one more at the end. That's what I'm going to create for my application. Before doing it, let us see the format. It looks like some sort of encrypted keys and a package name, which is something is familiar if you see the package name. So it may be our application package which I'm going to create, but before that there is some keys are there. If you notice the package name twice I have repeated, and it is paired with the different keys. For example, this one is different and another one is different, and maybe I have repeated the same. Mean your Android Eclipse packages, for example, when you connect your phone or emulator, when you hit run, Android uh, sign your application with the debug key store. I mean, there is a default key store available. Using that, it signs and install on the emulator or the phone when you hit run. That key store key or maybe the checksum value is here. The second one, which you create your own customized key store, which you will use it for packaging it, and then you create APK and distribute to market and give it to market where others can use. So that time you will use a different key store to create and package your application. So every time you may need to have two, and how to generate them we will see it. There are roundabout ways exist, but easiest way also there. If you notice, the familiar step Android tool export signed application package. This is popular. Let me disable for some time. Going to ignore all. This is for temporary restriction, so I'm just disabling the lint check because I know application works without and it doesn't have any errors. So I'm going to export signed application package. I've been given a screen where if you have already created your key store file, you can browse it, and I hope I already have a key store file called my key, something like that. The password what you entered will create your key store file, and enter them and decide the destination. On the destination, if you notice, this checksum values are available. This is the one actually this particular screen requires, but this particular certificate fingerprint, I mean, it's a kind of verbally want to compare it, it's kind of a fingerprint, it's kind of a certificate based on the key store file what you supply. So if you are supplying different key store, naturally every time the value will change, or if you are using the same key store for all the application, you can use the same one, but uh, Eclipse by default helps you to create such a fingerprint file or encrypted format. So that one you need to enter here. This is using Eclipse built-in tool, but in a command line also we can get these values, because I said there is two key store values, and one would be for debugging purpose, which you are testing on the emulator. Second one is the one which you create, which you are using that you are exporting your application, create a APK file. So you may have to have a two key store or two fingerprint generated, and then it could be added in the API keys or whatever certificate generation here, because on the test also we need to get a response, because mostly we'll be testing using emulators. So I cannot depend on this tool because it only helps me to see what is the fingerprint format for a given key store file, how to create a key store file for a debug key store. That also I need to see. So in the command line I need to see. But Android also gives you a example, I mean the Google, saying that please execute this line, key tool or something like that. In that you can discover SHA1 fingerprint of your developer certificate using this command, and that it actually wants you to enter here. Okay, let me see that. I'm going to copy them, just a line. So if you are using Windows, go to command. In this case, mine is Mac, I'm using terminal. So command line, you have to go and find your Java installation path where your Java is being installed. You have to find